No worries. It's my back.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Добро пожаловать всем. В эфире Анна Наклейщикова, и я сегодня с удовольствием представляю вам одного из моих любимых учителей из Великобритании, Стивена. Hello, Steven. Happy to see you.
Hello, Anne. Hello, Anna, and hello, the English Club. It's nice to see you all, or to meet you all.
Right. Мы сегодня познакомимся со Стивеном, узнаем про его профессию, его прошлое, почему он любит преподавание и чему конкретно он может нас научить. Обращайте внимание на британский акцент. So, Steven, maybe you will share some professional and educational background with us.
Yes, Anna, thank you very much. Hello again. My name is Stephen McCracken. I'm from Stirling in Scotland in the United Kingdom. My educational background is a BA honours degree in criminal psychology from Lancaster University in the UK. I then joined the UK government service and spent 15 years until 2019 as a British diplomat in a variety of foreign postings as the head of a department in the British Embassy in Islamabad in Pakistan, Hong Kong, Manila in the Philippines, and a very enjoyable 4 years at the British Embassy in Moscow. I spent a lot of that time traveling around the region in the area where I was based, giving presentations on visa issues. I was the head of the visa section in Islamabad, Hong Kong, Manila, and Moscow. So I traveled to different cities in Russia, different cities around the Philippines and Hong Kong, talking about visa rules and laws, basically how we can help the applicants to give us an application that we can give a visa to without any problems. In 2020, Anna, I changed my career and became a teacher. I've been thinking about teaching for some time. I really enjoy giving presentations as a diplomat and helping people to learn. I also used to do lots of voluntary work in Islamabad. I taught young kids to play cricket, one of my favorite interests. And in Manila, I taught groups of young kids to play guitar, a kind of British Embassy outreach project. And I really enjoyed teaching. So in 2020, I changed my career entirely, went back to university in the UK for a year and gained a postgraduate certificate of education at Sheffield University. And I also gained additional CELTA and TEFL qualifications in teaching English as a second language and an advanced TEFL qualification in teaching business English. These were from International House in London.
Fantastic, Steve. So I will explain in Russian a little bit for the people, okay? У Стивена не только огромный опыт работы дипломатом с иностранцами с разных стран, и из Филиппинов, и с Манилы, и с России, да, но и когда он принял решение работать уже больше не дипломатом, а стать учителем английского, он тоже очень основательно к этому процессу подошел и прошел огромные курсы переквалификации для того, чтобы стать прям дипломированным учителем английского языка для иностранцев. И эти все квалификации, которые он перечислял, они действительно затрагивают объемный такой вот и высокого уровня, уровень профессиональных знаний. И поэтому Стивен, он очень квалифицированный учитель, который понимает нужды студентов и дает именно то, что нужно. Fantastic, Steve. Right. So, do your students get good results?
They do. I must say they do. I spent my first proper teaching experience of teaching in person was at an English language school in Moscow. From November 1920 to May 2020, November 2020 to May 2021. And I taught two classes twice a week, 11 years and 16 years. and all my students in both classes got A or A plus outstanding grades in their end of year exams a year ago. In terms of my other students, all my students are developing well, I would say, in the classes I have with them, all one-to-one online now. They are all expanding their vocabulary very nicely. And the ones I'm formally teaching to help them get into prestigious schools, mainly in the UK, are passing their entrance exams. We are working on past papers. And something I particularly enjoy, Anna, that we can touch on a little bit later, is preparing them for their school interviews, which are quite rigorous. But as someone who's chaired interview panels for many years in the civil service, I know the kind of questions that are going to be asked. They're the same, whether for a job or for a school place. They're very similar.
Right.
And I help the students understand the questions they're likely to be asked. I prepare with them specifically tailored answers in language they would use. I don't make the language too high. I help them to expand their vocabulary as much as possible, but still so they will be able to speak naturally with the interviewer. And we discuss interview psychology, which I think is very important.
Right, I do agree with you, and it's really important. I will just say a few words in Russian very fast. И когда Стивен выбрал специализацию именно подготовки к интервью, он это делал, потому что он сам часто работал интервьюером, он знает, какие вопросы задаются на собеседованиях и в школу, и в университет, и в посольствах, то есть он на этом специализируется, и у него это очень хорошо получается, но также и он развивает не только английский для интервью или для написания резюме, но и просто общий английский. And you also like doing English literature because it's also kind of close to your heart, right? Tell me about your poetry competition, please. Okay.
Yes, certainly, Anna. Yeah, my postgraduate certificate in education in Sheffield 2 years ago was largely English literature. So the works of Shakespeare, Dickens, George Orwell. I think for any student, I would always recommend 1984 by George Orwell. Brilliantly written book, full of great vocabulary and imagery. The one thing I always say to my students, I'm sure they're sick of me every lesson, create imagery in your essays. Paint a picture using words, similes, metaphors. So I always try and get my students to write creatively. This partly goes back to my winning the UK National Poetry Competition many years ago. I wrote a poem about my grandfather who had just died aged 100 the previous year. He'd been through the First World War, all the big battles, Passchendaele, the Somme, etc., and Ypres. And I wrote about him and what he told me about his experiences in the First World War. Not so much the fighting, but his friends at the time. And their kind of relationships with each other, how they helped each other through it because they're all in the trenches, of course. And this poem, to my great surprise, won the National Poetry Competition. And I was offered a book contract and I wrote a book of poetry, basically a kind of satirical, political poetry, again, creating pictures with words or verbal cartoons, I called it, taking a particular politician and just enlarging the character a little bit. So it's still recognizable, but you can make it amusing as well, or quite biting satire too. So that worked well. I did have the offer of a second book, but then I was moving to London at the time and changing my career a little bit, so I didn't have the time. But I'd still like to do a second book. I've been in touch with the publishers who are still around, and I might well start writing a second book of poetry with them, I hope.
Fantastic, Steve. Видите, то есть Стив через любовь к английской литературе рассказал нам о том, что он и Чарльза Диксона, Диккенса, и Шекспира, и Уорла с удовольствием почитал бы с нашими студентами, потому что там очень много метафор. И, как он сказал, да, было бы классно, если бы вы писали через разные сравнения, метафоричный слог, свои какие-то эссе, таким образом вы могли бы украсить очень сильно свою письменную речь, и он сам этим любит заниматься и учить этому своих студентов. И описав опыт своих предков в разных ситуациях, имея любовь и к политике, и к истории, он написал сатирическое стихотворение, да, которое вошло в сборник стихотворений. Таким образом, он победил в конкурсе и был избран для публикации. Еще одну ему книгу предлагают, да, может быть, позже он ее напишет, но мы чувствуем и видим, что Стив действительно интересна литература, и он эту любовь к чтению и даже созданию своих произведений может нам передать. И мне кажется, это очень здорово. So, Steve, what kind of things we could read with the students? So we can go into classics, but we could also try some up-to-date things, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would always take my steer from the students. What are the students interested in? What are their passions? What are their interests? I always think that expanding vocabulary with a student always works best when we're discussing a subject they like and they know about, because they will be more interested in reading about it. So we could take any given book, of course, or we could take an article from National Geographic, or if they like music, well, there's music articles all over the internet in English. What kind of music do they like? Guitar playing.
And for us, it will be very interesting to learn the perspective of a British person, like the way you see things from your perspective, right? It will be, I think, a very involving discussion. Поэтому мы предлагаем нашим студентам попробовать почитать разные статьи, и сложные, может быть, какие-то классические short stories, и также мы предлагаем почитать просто журналы из National Geographic, из Cosmopolitan, то, что нравится нашим студентам. То есть мы хотим предложить варианты, вы будете дома практиковать навык чтения, а на занятии вы будете обсуждать и расширять словарный запас, таким образом пробуя свой английский, использовать как просто носители, да, вот просто как люди вот почитали книгу, обсуждают, про что это, какая интересная вещь была, что вас задело, что вас удивило, да, и это очень любопытно делать именно с преподавателем из Великобритании. So I also saw your fantastic teaching style, and I saw that you're very interested in the process. How would you describe your teaching style yourself?
Thanks, Anna. I would describe my teaching style as having a very calm and approachable manner. I really enjoy building a personal rapport with my students, especially on a one-to-one level, but also in small groups. I believe I create a well-organized, challenging, it's important to challenge a student, but be supportive to support them as well, and a flexible learning environment. Each lesson is individually tailored to my students' specific abilities, needs, and goals, but they aren't set in stone. I think flexibility is key. Sometimes a student just wants to talk for 10, 15 minutes, and I'm happy to do that as long as they are leading the conversation and I'm just helping them with their vocabulary.
Stephen, I'm very happy to learn more about you and to give our students an opportunity to learn more about you. And my last question would be about the Queen's Honor or something. Why did you get it? How come you managed to get it?
Oh, I actually haven't got that yet. I was put forward for a Queen's Honor by the British ambassador in Moscow. 2 years ago, as for the last few years, 5 years now, I've organized a concert at the British ambassador's beautiful residence, the former British embassy in Moscow, opposite the Kremlin, overlooking the Moscow River. And he's got the most amazing garden. And I have a strong interest, more than interest, passion for bluesy, rock, guitar playing music. And my great Moscow friends play it better than any musicians I've seen anywhere in the world. I highly recommend a concert. And they've all come and played for no fee to raise money for 2 Russian children's charities that were related to the British embassy. So we know that the money is going into the right places. And for the last 5 years, my Russian friends have played guitar. I've sold tickets. I've been given food. I've been given drinks. The PR was got bigger every year to raise money for these children, which are 2 different charities. One is the Lighthouse Home, the only hospice for terminally ill young people in Moscow. I think in Russia, but certainly in Moscow, where the nurses are specially trained. The walls are brightly painted, where young people with cancer, basically, are able to be treated with dignity in their final months and years. But they didn't get a lot of money. So I held a concert every year for that and another charity, which raised nearly 1 million rubles every year. It was heading up to 1 million rubles. And the British ambassador put me forward for an award from the Queen, where if I were to get the award, I would have to go to Buckingham Palace and the Queen or maybe Prince William would pin a medal on me. but I'm not quite sure, given the current situation, if that will be happening anytime soon. I don't know.
I see you are doing this because you're just generous in your heart. If this happens, it will be a pleasure, of course, but I see it's not the most important thing for you.
No, I would say it's absolutely not important at all, Anna. It'd be nice if it happens, but I'm losing no sleep over it.
But it's nice to be assigned for that.
Of course, be recognized, sure. Yeah, sure.
Right,
sure.
to be recognized, right. Fantastic. Видите, какие интересные люди встречаются нам на пути. Благодаря онлайну мы можем развиваться, и удивительный опыт у Стивена, удивительный прошлый опыт, текущий опыт, поэтому я с удовольствием презентую Стивена в качестве преподавателя English Club и приглашаю к вас на занятия. Подбираем мы либо индивидуальное обучение, либо обучение в группах, что просто-напросто бюджетнее. И с удовольствием проведу у вас процесс овладения английского языка на уровне королевы Великобритании. Не зря про нее сегодня Стивен вспоминал. Stephen, I'm very much delighted to have such a speech with you. Maybe if students ask more questions, I will move them forward to you. But at the moment, I think we understand everything. See you in classes. The English Club is happy to start cooperation.
Yeah, and Anna, can I just say too that with my background with the British Embassy for many years, I'm particularly interested in helping students with interview practice, creating, delivering effective presentations, creating personal statements, that kind of thing, as well as traditional English lessons. If any students want to have presentation practice, I've done thousands of them. I'd be more than happy to help with that kind of requirement as well.
Thank you, Steve. And it's time to say goodbye. Can you say it in Russian?
До свидания.
You can, yes, you can.